All right, today we're going to talk about how to write a well-written story. Specifically, we're going to be talking about organization. So the first thing that you need to know about what goes into a story, or what we call a narrative, is that you don't want to make an error. This is a mnemonic device. It's not exactly perfect, but it's something to keep in mind when you're thinking about how to organize your story. So E stands for the exposition, R stands for rising action 1, the other R stands for another rising action 2, the O stands for how to overcome the conflict, and the R equals the resolution. So the first thing that you need to start with is the exposition. That's just a fancy word that means the beginning of the story. So the exposition has 3 parts: who, had what problem, and where. So go ahead, think to yourself who you want your story to be about, and what is the conflict? What is something they need to overcome or go get, and where are they going to do that? When you're thinking about the conflict, think about the most common ones. There's man versus man. There's man versus self. There's man versus nature, man versus society, or man versus technology. Maybe there's a conflict with a person that they need to overcome. Maybe there's a conflict with their self that they need to overcome, or with nature, or maybe there's a big issue in society, or maybe robots are taking over. Now, a lot of times what I also like to think about is I like to go out and I like to find pictures and then I paste them in a PowerPoint or a Google Doc or something like that. And it really gives me a clear picture for when I write details later. So go ahead, think about that. Think about Googling and trying to find something that would be close to the type of story that you want to write. That's not always necessary, however. All right, but what is necessary is thinking about how your character is going to overcome the conflict. You are not going to solve it right now, but you need to think about the problem or the conflict, or there is no story. So I actually like to think about the conflict and how my character is going to solve it first. That way, when I start getting into the rising actions, I can think about how, and that's what's going to come up next. So why don't I just go to the next slide? You're going to think of 2 ways that the character is going to try to solve this problem. And you might actually think of more, okay? But they need to fail or they need to get more information. So once you know how your character is going to solve it, then you're going to go back and you're going to think to yourself, what are 2 other ways or other pieces of information that they needed in order to solve the problem, and why did it fail? So bonus as an option, as extra, you can have more than 2 rising actions, but I just came up with the mnemonic device error, so I only thought of 2, but obviously you can have as many as you need. Now remember, you already know how your character will succeed. So first you're going to do the exposition. You're going to think about what information or different ways your character tried to solve the problem but failed. And then eventually you're going to write about how they actually solved the problem. We call that the climax, or in my mnemonic device, how they overcame the problem. After the problem is solved, you're going to talk about how your character and how the other characters around him or her feel. What did they do about it? This is called following action or the resolution. So in the end, who felt what, and so what did they do as a result? So now go ahead and think about it. Now, to organize your writing, you know all you need is not to make an error. To make sure you have an exposition, which includes the character, the setting, and the problem. 2 different ways or more that your character tried to solve the problem or more information that they needed but failed, and then how they overcame that problem, and then how the character and or the other characters around them felt about the resolution. I hope this has helped someone. Now it's your turn to give it a try.